the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
For too long, American Indian tribes have faced a competitive disadvantage when litigating against powerful forces. With its American Indian law and policy practice, Robbins Kaplan, LLP, seeks to redefine excellence for high-stakes litigation in Indian country. They have worked hand-in-hand with tribes to implement the Tribal Law and Order Act, fighting against diminishment of tribal lands and natural resources, and improving public safety on reservations. The Robbins Kaplan American Indian Law and Policy Practice serves tribes and individuals on commercial, government investigations, agency and tribal boundary disputes, as well as personal injury. Founded and led by former United States Attorneys Brendan Johnson and Tim Purdon, their American Indian Law and Policy Practice exists to bring justice to tribal clients whose claims in the past have been dismissed or ignored due to their underdog status. If you or your tribe are facing legal issues, contact robinskaplan.com or call toll-free at 1-800-553-9910.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy. But with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Wind chill advisory in effect overnight as we expect partly cloudy skies and a low of 20 below. Friday sunny with a high near 4 and Saturday cloudy with a high around 30. Vinaigrette is locally owned and has been offering the finest olive oils and vinegars since 2009. They have everything from darker white balsamic to cold-pressed extra virgin olive oils from all over the world. Vinaigrette is located at 50th and Xerxes in Minneapolis or at vinaigrettemn.com.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Couldn't cut, hitting cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanjahari, which means distant thunder. My colonized name is Robert Pilot, and we discuss local and national news and events, Native news and events. And as you know, Ogama, Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues.
And this portion of the show is brought to you by the Native Roots Trading Post in downtown Minneapolis.
Yeah, it's been slow down there. I guess this time of the year is the slowest time ever in retail, restaurants, and all that. So hopefully it'll pick up again and we don't go out of business. No, I'm just kidding. But hey, Ogama, Wendy's got the night off, and it's you and me, and we have Robert Lilligren on today, and we're going to overwork him. He just doesn't know that yet. We'll probably do 3 segments with Robert. So, Ogama, you do the news here, and we're so happy to have you and be part of this team for over about the same, well, half the time that we've been on the air. So we're in our 5th season right now, and we couldn't do this without you. So without any further ado, let's get with Ogama with the news. Welcome, Ogama.
Hi, Anim Bonjour, everybody. I'm Ogamaganua. My name means Strong Golden Eagle Woman in Ojibwe, and I'm a member of the Red Lake Nation in northern Minnesota. I really like to talk about the Line 3 issue here on Native Roots Radio. I think it's important as we are broadcast out of the Twin Cities. Big event coming up this Friday. Honor the Earth and I believe Building Unity of Wisconsin are hosting an online First Friday Film and Discussion Festival for January. So this Friday, January 7th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., they'll be airing a documentary about the Indigenous-led struggle to stop Line 3, featuring Winona LaDuke, Tara Hauska, and poet and hip hop artist Thomas X. The film is called LN3 Seven Teachings of the Anishinaabe in Resistance. Other co-sponsors of the event include MN350 Madison, Family Farm Defenders, Intertribal Water Walkers of Wisconsin. There's a whole list. It's this really cohesive event by all these different co-sponsors. You do need to register for the Zoom link and the film discussion. You can register at tinyurl.com/Jan for January FFF 2022. Again, that's tinyurl.com/JANFFF2022. They will also be live streamed at Facebook at facebook.com/buildingunitywi for Wisconsin. And you can email buildingunitywi@gmail.com if you would like more information. I would love to be able to be there for the whole thing, but our show runs until 7, so I'll probably try to pop in late to catch the 40-minute tail end of the 40-minute documentary and at least talk about the discussion. So again, that's this Friday, January 7th. You can check out Honor the Earth or Native Roots Radio's Facebook and Twitter pages for more information, where to find that link if you didn't catch it. Another big group that's kind of been at the head of this Line 3 movement is the NDN Collective. And just early in January, they officially debuted a mural on their collective headquarters in Rapid City, South Dakota. So I wanted to give a shout out to them. This mural that they unveiled is really beautiful. It features an Indigenous woman, actually, I believe 2 Indigenous women. 2 Indigenous people, for sure an Indigenous woman, with a megaphone. And it's painted right at the top of the Indian Collective headquarters. Their address is 408 Knollwood Drive in Rapid City, South Dakota, if you happen to be in that area. The mural artist is Voten Henriquez. And in 2019, they collaborated to get the mural ready and then also did a blanket design with 8th Generation. So you can get the Defend blanket on their website at Indian Collective Store. It is indiancollective.org with the word shop in front of it. So that's shop.indiancollective.org. So if you want to check out that Defend blanket, it's really cool. But that mural is beautiful, and just shout out to you guys and all the work you did around Line 3 as well. Robert, you're in Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Minneapolis-St. Paul has reinstated their indoor mask mandates per the mayor. So Mayor Jacob Fry signed an emergency regulation reinstating the mask policy just this week. So that is existing in the Twin Cities if you are coming to visit, say, Native Roots Trading Post, or if you're going to be maybe, I don't know if it counts in Roseville, but did you hear about Muckwa Coffee yet, Robert?
No, tell me.
Muckwa Coffee is going to be opening up in Roseville. Their business is Indigenous owned. Their owner, Jamie, is a Leech Lake Ojibwe member, and they're going to be featuring some Native artwork and other products at the shop, including wild rice from her home community. The name Muckwa comes from the Ojibwe word for black bear, and their logo is also a black bear that was designed by Sarah House from Heartberry, which is another great Indigenous owned company. So they will be opening their doors in Roseville, Muckwa Coffee, this spring. And they are offering anybody, it looks like they had a mug sale. So you got to go over to their Facebook page and see if you can still catch a mug to help sponsor the opening. So pretty excited about another Indigenous business coming to the Twin Cities. How about you, Robert?
Yeah, and I think Jamie Becker Finn was selling those mugs for them as a fundraiser. So I missed out on those, and I said, "Hey, we need those for our store." And she said it's a short run, but it's always exciting.
Oh,
Maybe
shucks, I can't get one.
yeah, maybe we can sell some of their coffee at our store in downtown Minneapolis. That'd be awesome to hook up with them. Maybe that's something you can do tomorrow in your spare time is reach out to them.
Yes, get a collaboration going. Another event that's coming up that I guess is a little bit more national, the Ponca tribe of Oklahoma is sponsoring a Native Youth Leadership Council meeting. It is an introductory and informal meeting. It's going to be Monday, January 17th at 11 a.m. They will have at their cultural center, but they will have a virtual option for attending. Any and all Native youth and parents or guardians are invited to attend. They're going to have some special presentations. If you are interested in the virtual option for attending, you can call 580-382-1766. So that is really kind of an exciting thing that's happening there. And in kind of sad news, earlier this week, the first known case of the Omicron variant was found at the Navajo Nation. If you've not been following the Navajo Nation has been hit particularly hard by COVID-19. Their president, Jonathan Nez, is still speaking that their best defense is to get fully vaccinated, get a booster shot, and to be very cautious in public and wear masks. He has been talking about that since the very beginning with COVID-19. They've essentially been the epicenter for COVID-19 cases in Indian country during the pandemic. Their total overall number of positive COVID-19 cases as of Monday, according to Native News Online, was 41,657 on the Navajo Nation. And that was since the reporting began in March of 2020, and the total number of deaths, they've lost 1,590 relatives as of Monday on the Navajo Nation. So my prayers are out to the Navajo Nation as we go through another round with these COVID-19 variants, and really hoping that this lifts for us soon, right, Robert?
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, another miracle can happen. You know, a year ago, we were still hoping for a vaccine, and now maybe we can have something where we can be protected even more down the road.
Yes, and with what's happening with the Omicron variant and those kinds of things, they're actually starting to recommend that people really look into if you have access to wearing an N95 mask or doubling up and wearing two masks if you're going to be in public, and to really be truly cautious as to your interactions with people, keeping that circle really small and really close to your heart, so that you're not putting yourselves and other people in danger. So let's keep that in mind up here in Minnesota as we go back into mask mandates and into the thick of flu season as well. You can get vaccinated for seasonal flu as well as COVID-19. So that's an important thing you can do to help protect your community as well.
Hey, thanks, Ogama. We'll be right back after this short message with Robert Lilligren of NADQ. We'll be right back. I heard sex trafficking happens a lot in Indian country. What is that?
Here are some of the real reasons why sex trafficking happens in Indian country. Unequal gender roles that were forced on us by colonization. Communities don't have enough resources. Silence around domestic and sexual violence. Lack of attention and justice for missing and murdered Indigenous people. There's a lot of behavior that keeps our communities out of balance. These are just a few true reasons why Native communities are targeted by traffickers. When these acts of violence happen in our communities, it opens us all up for exploitation.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hey, Wendy, what are we doing for dinner after the show?
How about we go to J. Selby's on 169 Victoria Street in St. Paul? They have a delicious plant-based menu that's compassionate and environmentally sustainable.
I'm getting their spot-on vegan Big Mac, the dirty secret.
You can pick up and they deliver within a 5-mile radius, or you can call them at 651-222-3263 or visit jselbys.com.
Well, you sold me, Wen. Let's go order at J. Selby's tonight.
I'm hungry.
Hi, I'm Anna, and I'm 8 years old, and I'm getting my COVID vaccine. If you're between 5 and 11 years old, you can get vaccinated too. Getting the jab might seem a little scary, but there is lots of good reasons to do it. You'll be protected from COVID, and you'll be less likely to spread it to people like family and friends. Have your parents find a vaccination site. by calling 651-304-9986 or visit vaccineconnector.mn.gov.
J&S Bean Factory is a native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is sponsored by Robbins Kaplan LLP.
Right on, right on. Here, let me give you a little applause. I always like to try the applause button. There we go. There, it's working now. Yes. Speaking of which, hey, we have Robert Lilligren on. Robert Lilligren is the CEO of the Native American Community Development Institute, among others. And if we check out his resume, I think we're up to 75 or 85 things you do for the community, something like that. Welcome, Robert. It's always a pleasure. I always look forward to spending time with you, and we just have a conversation and people join in, so it's always great to see you, Robert.
Yeah, bonjour. Nice to see you, Ogama. Nice to see you, Robert. Hope you're well. Hope you're warm.
Oh, I'm a little chilled. Wendy's got the night off, so I'm a little discombobulated. You know, I'm watching the clock, and we were 15 seconds late on that, and I need my wife. What the heck's going on here? But hey, great to have you two here, and always great to listen to your take on what's going on, native-wise, national-wise, and just what's going on. But today's a day of remembrance, and it's kind of interesting that you and I are able to sit down and talk here on January 6th. What are your thoughts? Yesterday it seemed like the Attorney General, I believe, didn't really have too many harsh things to say, and they're picking the lower fruit and not going to the top. And Biden said a few decent things today. I don't know. What's your take?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy day, right? I was thinking yesterday and today about just the feelings of watching it happen, watching it unfold on TV. I don't like a lot of people. I was watching the certification of the Electoral College and then just couldn't believe it when it all hell kind of broke loose and the riot and insurrection started. And so it's a solemn day. I was watching The Late Show with Stephen Colbert last night, and Senator Amy Klobuchar was the guest. And she had been the guest on the January 6th show. And so she was giving some real firsthand perspective, 1 year later. And you could hear it in her voice and see it in her demeanor that trauma from that day was still very close to the surface. And a couple times she was talking about seeing police officers with scratches down their faces and walking through the hall of statues and seeing the graffiti sprayed on the walls and the statues. And she was emotional. So you can just tell, I mean, that's a voice from someone who was in it, right? And it still moves her.
Yeah, not to mention there was feces. I don't know where do they get into that? And I was in total denial because I would see convoys driving to Washington for 2 days prior to this, and I was just like in total denial of like, oh, there's going to be a couple hundred people there. I mean, I don't know what's with me, and all of a sudden I'm watching on the internet live feeds of what's happening at the Capitol, and I was like, wow.
Right. It's not anything I thought I would ever see in my lifetime. A direct attack on the nation's capital. And then for people like us, it's not like the federal government has always been so good to Native people, but at least it's something. It's a layer of protection process from the murderous mob. And that's what we saw a year ago was the murderous mob.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just stunned, still talking about it, and was this really real? I always joked and kinda not joked with my students when I was teaching, Robert, and that was, saying that, "This country's gonna fall, this is someday, and we need to be ready." And then I'd always kid with my students, go, "We're not ready. We don't know how to, like, grow our own food," and I mean, we're working towards all that, and but really, that should be a wake-up call for us Native Americans with this democracy.
I agree. And I think that I would, maybe push a little and say, I think maybe Native people are a little more ready, right? We're self-governing. We have our own nations. We have our own way of doing things. I think even talking about food, energy, I think that indigenous ways are really the response to a lot of what's gone wrong with humanity in this century or in the last couple of centuries. And so there's a bit of an opportunity to return to those kind of indigenous ways. And I remember back to when I was on the Minneapolis City Council and I represented a very diverse, kind of lower wealth, very dynamic part of the core city, and I loved it. And during the economic downturn of 2008, 2009, I noticed that people that I represented, first off, didn't have so far to fall economically, so that didn't have that impact on them, and that my constituents were some of the most resilient people I had ever seen. And so watching these wealthier parts of the city, wealthier wards within the city really suffer through that economic downturn, I thought, hey, my peeps are doing okay. We had resources, we had resiliency. And so it could be, maybe it's kind of the same thing as we had, go deeper into this crisis of U.S. democracy. Maybe it's
Yeah.
Native people, Indigenous people that kind of show us the way.
Wow, what a turn, in this conversation, that's really some really cool stuff. I know we kid around, this is our 5th year now, Robert, and you've been with us a good 2 years, and I just wanna say Peeny We're also now, in Milwaukee. So we got picked up another 2 radio stations and are
Great.
expanding our brand. Maybe you can just tell our new audience just a little bit about yourself so we can get acclimated because you come on almost every Thursday and we kind of jump into the conversation and maybe some people are going, well, who the heck's he talking to? And who the heck is he?
Cool. Well, yeah, and congratulations on your success, on the expansion of your listening audience, and well deserved and well done to you, Ogama, Wendy, the whole team. And yeah, so I'm Robert Lilligren. I'm a citizen of the White Earth Ojibwe Nation. I live in Minneapolis, just south of downtown. I'm a third generation Minneapolis urban Indian. And although I didn't grow up right here, I lived just a few blocks from where my dad grew up and where my Ojibwe grandmother lived out her life. And uh, sort of one of the life-altering things that happened to me was back in 2001. I was elected to the Minneapolis City Council. I was the first tribal citizen ever elected to any office within the city of Minneapolis. And there's since been, I think we're up to 8 now elected to different offices, so that's progress. I served on the Minneapolis City Council for 12 years as council vice president for all of those years, and loved it. And I stopped doing it, geez, it's about in 2014, I left the city council, and since then, I've worked as the CEO of Little Earth of United Tribes here in Minneapolis, which is a unique and amazing housing development of Native people here in South Minneapolis. And I also work as the CEO of the Native American Community Development Institute, which is NACD, who, amongst other things, helps shepherd the community's vision of an American Indian cultural corridor, an economic engine, a destination right here in South Minneapolis on East Franklin, which has been sort of urban Indian country for well over half a century. And I also still serve in government. I serve on our regional government here in the Twin Cities. It's our 7-county metropolitan council. I represent Minneapolis and the suburban county of Robbinsdale, part of Minneapolis. And I'm also the first tribal member to serve on that body in its over 50-year history. And I'm just kind of in civic affairs, I joke with my board at Native American Community Development Institute. My asset is my Rolodex, my golden Rolodex. I just have been able to build an incredible network and just had a lot of experiences that I feel really privileged and I'll try to figure out how to put it to work within the Native community. So that's me.
Yeah, well, also too, and as a teacher, I always never wanted to compare. Like, if I had one of the older students, I'd never want to say, "Hey, how is so and so?" I'd really just want to focus on the student that is my student, as opposed to, because I'm sure they hear it from all the other teachers, like, "Hey, how's your brother doing?" or "How's your older sister doing?" And I never really did that unless they would bring it up. But one thing I want to say, we only got a minute left in the segment, is that your father was on the radio for so many years, and after he retired, he really jumped in with the language at the community, and I think that's worth bringing up too to our new audience.
I appreciate that. You're old enough to remember him, but my dad, his name is Chuck Lilligren. Sort of the centerpiece of his radio career was on WCCO radio, and he was really kind of a glass ceiling bear. He really brought his Native identity strongly into spaces where there weren't Native people before, and then later in his life, like you said, he was big in cultural reclamation, language. He worked at attended a number of language tables. So I appreciate you're always remembering him, because I really think he did some cool and important stuff.
It's always a memory of my father, because he would get up early and be listening to the morning show on CCO, which in those days, there was no such thing as KQRs. They were the number one in the 5-state area, the 100,000, 150,000 or something like that, clear watts all over the country. And I mean, they're corporate now. They were owned by I don't know, by a conglomerate or whatever, but they're corporate now. They're part of CBS.
Right.
So, but those days, I still remember the Good Morning song and all those
Oh
things.
yeah, it was like a network almost. It had such reach, that station.
Yeah, it really did. Well, here with Robert Lilligren, and we're really excited. We're gonna take a short break and pay some bills, but we really appreciate Robert on here, and we're gonna come right back after this short break. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
If you're hurting in your relationship or have been affected by sexual violence, you're not alone. Strong Hearts Native Helpline can help you through these difficult and uncertain times. Strong Hearts Helpline is a free 24/7 confidential domestic dating and sexual violence helpline for Native Americans. Help is available by calling 1-844-762-8483 or by clicking on the Chat Now icon on strongheartshelpline.org. This message is sponsored by the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in 4 directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy, but with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
Navigating COVID while protecting yourself can be difficult. Fortunately, there's a hotline you can call with any questions. The Department of Indian Work St. Paul partnered with the Minnesota Department of Health to open the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline. They provide information on vaccines, booster shots, and testing sites. Right now, booster shots are available to anyone over the age of 18 for those who are eligible. The Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline can also help with housing, food, medical, and educational support. If you or someone you know has questions about COVID-19, vaccinations, booster shots, or testing, please call 651-304-9986. Again, the number is 651-304-9986. The Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline is open for calls Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Call the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline at 651-304-9986.
This is Santita Jackson, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I couldn't be more excited about starting our days together, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 a.m. Central, on the Progressive Voice of Minnesota.
Next time on Philosophy Talk, 2021, the examined year.
We've got some questions about the last 12 months.
Now that civilians are going into space, are we running out of room in the stars?
What will work look like in a post-pandemic world?
Have we said farewell to the republic we once dreamed of?
It's the examined year, 2021.
Because the unexamined year is not worth reviewing.
Next time on Philosophy Talk.
Philosophy Talk, every Sunday at 8 a.m. and again at 2 p.m. on AM 950.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Wind chill advisory in effect overnight as we expect partly cloudy skies and a low of 20 below. Friday sunny with a high near 4 and Saturday cloudy with a high around 30. Vinaigrette is locally owned and has been offering the finest olive oils and vinegars since 2009. They have everything from darker white balsamic to cold-pressed extra virgin olive oils from all over the world. Vinaigrette is located at 50th and Xerxes in Minneapolis or at vinaigrettemn.com.
Hi, this is Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas. I'm Ho Chunk, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
We are Elusive Nation.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Alliant Energy, powering beyond.
I love that tagline. Hey, we're here with Robert Lilligren, CEO of Native American Community Development Institute. And we were talking a little bit about your bio, and it made me think a little bit about the deep history of Franklin Avenue and the good and bad, you know, back in the day with all the bars and even the Indian bars and American Indian movement, its first office, and where it is right now, Robert.
Yeah, Franklin Avenue, East Franklin Avenue, for folks who aren't from here, is a major east-west thoroughfare with a deep history, right? It connects the Mississippi River to a chain of lakes, and I'm sure it grew up around sort of a native pathway that folks used to get from the river to the lakes. And it's got a more recent history with the native community, and since the middle of the last century, it's been very much considered Indian country. You'd mentioned the bars. It was most famous for a number of bars along East Franklin where the native community hung out. My folks used to come from where we lived in the suburbs, and that's where they socialized. And so it had kind of a sense of a community gathering place and a community center, all of those bars, but it excluded a lot of people, right? And it promoted a lot of stuff that was maybe not the healthiest within the native community. And so in about the 1990s, most of the bars were shut down, and the sort of contemporary native urban Indian community started to take root there. And it's a geography that is so strongly identified with the native community here. Little Earth of United Tribes is just a few blocks off Franklin. As you said, the American Indian movement was headquartered here. From my office on Franklin Avenue, within maybe 6 blocks, there's probably 40 native organizations, tribes that have presence, facilities there. And there's a movement that NACD, Native American Community Development Institute, has been supporting, which is the community's vision of an American Indian cultural corridor along East Franklin, and leveraging the strong presence and the high level of native property ownership to create a destination that's a native-led economic initiative, economic development initiative, and a destination that people can take the light rail from the airport, from St. Paul, from Minneapolis, and really elevate the history of East Franklin Avenue, the American Indian Cultural Corridor.
And it's awesome. And Ogama, I know you. We were talking in our little private chat a little bit about you got a question too, and maybe we can segue into some more conversation about the cold weather and what's happening, Ogama.
Right. Robert Lilligren in the last segment mentioned about the resiliency of Native people that he spotted as he started to get involved as a civic member of the community in Minneapolis. And I believe that that resiliency really comes with the community connection. Like you were saying, even when it was bars, it was a place for the community.
Right.
And that's a big part of what NACD is about. And it sounds like you had a talk today talking about our unhoused relatives in the area. Do you want to give some updates on that? I know Franklin Avenue's been famous for that
Yeah.
Indian
Thanks.
encampment there.
Yeah. Thanks, Ogama. I know you came down and were helpful on the avenue as well after the murder of George Floyd, and it's just such a strongly identified part of the city with Native folks. And this kind of harkens back to 2018 when we had this enormous homeless camp that popped up right in the middle of the cultural corridor. It was about 300 people, 200 tents. It was really something, and it really launched a different conversation around unsheltered homelessness and Native people being unsheltered. And statistics like 25% of the unsheltered people in this state are Native, when we're only maybe what 2% of the population. And in the metro area, a Native person is 17 times more likely to be unsheltered than someone from the broader community. And so it started a different kind of conversation. And this morning we had an emergency meeting of the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors leadership. Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors, or MUD, is about 3 dozen organizations in the metro. It's 50 years strong leadership forum, and where we come together, work collaboratively, and try to best serve our relatives. And the issue of unsheltered homelessness has been central to our conversations for the last 3 years. So now, with the it's very, very cold here. It'll be in the double digits below zero again tonight. We have people living in tents outside. There's one particular camp, if you're familiar with the area, it's at 26th and Bloomington Avenue, just a few blocks from the cultural corridor. It's strongly identified with the Native community. And but there are other camps as well in and around the cultural corridor. And with the latest COVID surge with the Omicron, there's so much discussion. It's just raging through the Native community in general and through the unsheltered community especially. And there's been very little response from the resource holders, those most responsible public sector, cities, counties, states, onto how to care for our relatives in this emergency situation. And I got to tell you, Ogama, it's kind of disappointing because I feel like we've been having this exact same conversation for 3 years. But the hopeful part is to see the capacity within the Native orgs that serve our relatives sleeping outside, and how we're there prepared to respond, to use the resources that they have, try to get new dollars from the public sector just to support the work. Because with COVID surge and the sort of trajectory of that, and the people needing services right now, and there seems to be a de facto policy from our cities here, Minneapolis and St. Paul, to just kind of leave the camps as they are is the best way forward through this surge. That could be argued that that's not the best policy, but that's sort of what's happening. And so today we met. It was just kind of heartbreaking to listen to these folks who are out in the field and what they're trying to do, and then what they're seeing, and the alarming rates of COVID infection amongst our unsheltered relatives.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's. Go ahead, Ogama.
Just on that note, you were talking about how the community in Minneapolis and St. Paul just wants to leave these encampments alone. Sadly, that is a better alternative than what they spent most of the last 2 summers doing, which was taking the time to use their police force to break up these people with nowhere to go. And breaking up these encampments throughout Powderhorn Park was a big one.
Right.
The homeless encampment at Franklin was a big one as
Yeah.
well, where there were police raids coming through. So the idea that they're leaving them alone is an improvement, but that's certainly still not enough.
I agree. At this point right now, that's probably the best course of action. It's not a good one when you consider the humanity of our relatives and stuff. But right now and for the next few weeks, it's hard to imagine that we could put together a better plan, right? And so yes, it may be better to leave folks where they are, and then we need the resources to care for them. And just listen to the providers talking this morning. Their staff, they have huge chunks of their staff that are unable to work because of either infections or exposure or family members with COVID. And it's dire. It's a crisis level. And the powers that be turn to us in the community and say, well, what should we do? What should we do? And it's like, well, just give us the resources and we'll do our best. At this point, that's about all that we can do. And then let's invest in community driven solutions, culturally specific community driven solutions that we all know that are the longer term responses.
I feel like what 2018 there was a big outreach of urban Indians and people from the 11 tribes here in Minnesota swooping in and helping out whatever way they can. But now we have it accentuated with COVID, and it's in cold weather, and it's just COVID's a big red alert. Now we have COVID and homeless.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. What can our listeners do to help support you or help support what's happening in Minneapolis and in their own communities too?
Well, I think, yeah, thanks for asking. And I'm not an expert in this. I'm just in these conversations. But my response, the first thing would be vaccinate and mask, distance when you can. Part of the issue with our unsheltered relatives is they don't just stay in their camp. They move around. A lot of them, people, when it gets this cold, move in with relatives just to survive. So they may be either getting exposure or causing exposure. So I think it's the fundamental directions: mask, vaccinate, distance if when you can. And I think that's key. And I feel like we're just we've been heading towards this incredible acceleration for several months. We could see it. I think people overall had kind of lukewarm responses, but now we need to be very, very serious about this. And so that would be the first thing. And then there are two organizations I would call out if folks want to kind of check in with them. One is the American Indian Community Development Corporation, AICDC. Mike Gozi is the executive there, and his organization does incredible outreach. They've really innovated some of the service models that we're implementing here in the Twin Cities, the community-based, culturally specific ones. Another would be Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center, MIWRC, and they are doing outreach and services as well. They're kind of in the forefront. So if you want specific support to organizations, those are the two that I would recommend.
Wow, yeah, it's difficult. It's hard because those are our relatives, and they're the unseen. We're not seeing it on the news. We're seeing sexy things like white girls missing, and things like that are really keeping us out of the loop. And that's why I feel like it's really important to have guests like you and to have this show, Robert, that we can bring these things up that are really important and should be important to everyone. And we have a lot of allies out there that listen to the show that really want to help. Robert, Wendy's not here. Can you do another half a segment here?
Sure, I can stay on. You got me.
On live radio, you can't say no, right? Cool, but we'll be right back with Ogama and Robert Lilligren. This is Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot. And as Wendy would say, stay with us.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Things are feeling so empty and lonely. I wish I could still see my friends.
Oh, hi, Mark. How have you been?
I don't know, dude. Things have just been, I don't know, actually. It's been many different things. I've mostly just felt alone.
Yeah, I know that feeling all too well, man. But things are starting to look up.
Huh? Oh, yeah, how so?
Well, they're coming out with new vaccines so we can finally see our friends again.
Yeah, I've heard those, but I just don't know where to get them.
Well, you can get them at a vaccination clinic.
This message is brought to you by McGeezy Communications and Minnesota Department of Health.
Aho, relatives. My name is George McCauley, Omaha Nation. I'm a citizen of the Omaha Nation in Nebraska, but reside in the Twin Cities area. As we head into wintertime, many of us will be back together indoors. It's important to make sure you receive your COVID booster shot. Those 65 and over are recommended to receive their booster dose. Older Americans are more at risk for complications for COVID-19. So get your booster shot to make sure you stay safe and healthy this winter. All 3 COVID vaccine boosters have been approved. Find a vaccine site by calling 651-304-9986 or go to this website, vaccineconnector.mn.gov. 651-304-9986 or go to vaccineconnector.mn.gov.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations.
Oh.
All right. Wait, one more time. Ooh.
Nice.
I had to pop that up there. Hey, we just want to finish up here with Robert Lilligren here of Native American Community Development Institute. I did that by heart, and it's really interesting.
Well done.
And one in a row here after 2 years, right? Oh, look at Ogamas applauding. There's a few times that I've introduced Dr. Stately that works for you too, and totally messed it up. He's going, oh, not really. That's not where I work, but we'll get it right here soon. Maybe in the next decade after the.
It's a new year. It's a new year.
It is. Hey, so Robert, I just wanted to give you a chance to just voice a few things before we let you go here. I appreciate you holding on just a little bit, but what are your hopes for the new year? I know there's an election coming up, and you and I both like talking politics, and we rocked the vote native style last time with 13 of the 14 native community candidates in this state that we know of. There could have been more, but that we knew of won. And so we want to keep on pushing ahead.
Yeah, I think the election's going to be a big deal in my world. And already, just in the first week of the year, we're getting contacts from some of our national partners looking to support our voter outreach work. We have our project, Make Voting a Tradition, which is now going statewide. We have a Minnesota table of Make Voting a Tradition. And we're going to start engaging with tribes on tribal election and increasing voter turnout and engagement in tribal elections. But we've had contact from our partners and funders already looking to make sure that we're adequately supported through this election cycle. And this is just going to be huge, both in our state and in our country. And there's some early indicators, how congressional redistricting is going that actually favors Democrats a little more than the last round. And just some local elections that show that I think there's real possibilities in these midterms. Generally speaking, traditionally, historically, the president's party loses in the midterms. But I think we might change history a little this cycle.
Yeah, I do. And that's a whole nother story and another show because of, I think you have the mainstream media wanting to say different things or it's really close. But the reality of it is, I think, a little different than what they're reporting. I don't know. That's just my opinion. But I really appreciate you stopping in. You know, have a great day. Any last words before we let you go?
No, I just always appreciate you. I appreciate your show, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and we'll be rocking the boat native style again when it gets close to that time. We'll be having another show, and hopefully, you and your community can help us really spread the word out again because that'd be awesome.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, right on. Well, you know, you went to Brown Institute, so you could probably do this job a little better than me. And so, yeah, either co-hosting or hosting the Rock the Boat Native Style with Nancy Bolio, but that'd be fun. So we'll talk more about that. And again, Robert Pilgrim, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, miigwech. Thanks for having me.
Right on. Wow, that's we really like to have Robert on Ogama, and you know. It's just amazing the work that it's done in Minneapolis and how much it's changed. I mean, even far back as 1992, when the police were throwing intoxicated Native Americans in the trunk and taking them to not to the hospital, but to be arrested. We have more. You know, that was before Robert Lilligren was elected as a member of the city council, and so we have more voice now, Ogama.
Right, and I would always like to go back, and Nancy Bolio, who joins our show on Tuesdays, talks about it all the time. If you're not at the table, you're what's being served, and I've heard another variation of that. If you're not at the table, then you're probably on the menu. And it's really important that Robert Lilligren and other community members, you know, take that step, even just to be involved at the local city council level for representation is super important.
Hey, I've been getting a few messages from one of our great allies up in the deep north, Keisha, and I want to get her on because there's a protest happening tonight, and I want her to tell our audience what's going on. Keisha, are you there right now?
Yes, this is.
Hey, we got a few minutes here. Can you blast out that information that we were texting back and forth and what's happening up in the deep north?
Absolutely. My name is Tasia Martineau. A lot of people know me for leading a protest camp here in northern Minnesota. We were fighting the Line 3 pipeline for future generations. And when we talk about future generations, we're speaking about our children and our children who are not yet here. Most recently, my mother passed away on Christmas Day. During the funeral, our nieces and our nephews who were in the foster care system, they were surrounded by the love and support of our family. And all of that love made them realize that they had people who really cared about them, people who are, you know, willing to fight a pipeline to ensure the safety of the water that they drink. And it came to light that while in the foster care system, these children were being horrifically abused by their foster parent, Dawn Amos Mackey, who is a social worker for the Fond du Lac Human Services here on the reservation, and also a Fond du Lac foster parent. While this came to light, they also showed us videos and photos of their younger siblings currently being abused by Dawn Amos Mackey's sister, Coco Amos Mackey. This was reported, the photos and the videos were shown to social services, and they were taken into a 72-hour hold. While with our family, you know, our nephews detailed some severe and horrific abuse, very similar to what our ancestors went through during the boarding school era. And this has been completely heartbreaking for our family while reeling from the loss of our mother and our matriarch. And it's to the point where Fond du Lac Human Services and Carleton County Human Services have chosen to return these children to the abusers. And so tonight, we'll be heading to the Carleton Youth Shelter to protest that. We'll be risking arrest. And tomorrow, 10 a.m. at 14 North 14th Street, Cloquet, Minnesota, at the Carleton County Human Services building, we will be occupying that parking lot. We will be putting up a teepee. We will be praying for the injustice that is ongoing that our Indigenous children are facing within the system. We are asking people to come join us, to come stand with us. You know, when we say Native Children Matter, we don't just mean our ancestors broken and abused, buried at the boarding schools. We also mean our children who are here in the now, many of them in the foster care system. In the state of Minnesota, we make up 2% of the population as Indigenous people, but over 60% of the children in foster care are Native American. So we want to draw attention and awareness to this ongoing abuse and the horrific injustice that the justice system has been, you know, overlooking these young children for so long, to the point where it's become normal for children to age out of the system and speak about these issues as if it's an everyday occurrence. So we're asking people to join us. We're asking people to help us draw awareness. And we're asking for prayers for these children and all of our missing children who are being hidden within the system.
Tasha, thank you. Thank you so much for stopping in and giving us that information. And again, Pini Gigi for all you do. And thank you for jumping in and getting the word out. Pini Gigi.
Absolutely. Miigwech and Wapila.
Ho. All right. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. And I've been your host, Robert Pilot. I want to give a quick shout out to Robert Lilligren for stopping in. Of course, Ogama, miss you, Wendy. And we're the 7th generation. We're still here. Free Leonard Peltier. Wear a mask. Mask up. And pray for us. Pray for yourself. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake.
Hey everybody, this is Gregory Rich, founder of Habitation Furnishing and Design and host